Alarm goes off spontaneously. Opel Mokka, 2015. Fuel, petrol or diesel. Transmission, manual or automatic. Drive, two-wheel drive. Year of construction, 2015. Mileage, completed by customer. Known problems. Opel Mokka. Common problems. Theft alarms that go off spontaneously are more common in Opel Mokka and other Opel models around these years. Regular causes. Door contact, switches that sometimes fail without an error code. Bonnet switch that occasionally gives an open signal due to internal wear or moisture. Tailgate switch or broken cable in the wiring harness to the tailgate. Internal error in siren with emergency battery, lithium battery outdated. Comfort module or BCM with poor ground or voltage drop. Malfunctions and recalls. No widespread recall specific to the alarm is known. There are various service bulletins from Opel about hood lock switches and moisture problems with locks and wiring harnesses. Vulnerable parts. Hood lock and switch. Door locks with integrated micro switches. Wiring harness at the doors and tailgate, break in the rubber grommet. Siren with internal backup battery. Trouble alarm. Car has standard alarm without interior sensors. Door locks seem to work. Bonnet lock gives no error message. Wiring appears to be well measured. No DTCS in BCM or alarm module with TS2 web and GDS2. Diagnosis in general. Diagnostic steps. Always carefully investigate your complaint first. When does the alarm go off? Within how much time after closing? Temperature or rain depending. Only in specific parking space or always. Other turn signals or only sirens. Emergency lock works well. Common faults with this complaint. Bonnet switch with intermittent interruption. Slot micro switches that sometimes fail without an error code. Internal error in siren backup battery that causes voltage peaks or false alarms. Diagnostic equipment. GDS2 with live data on BCM and alarm functions. Multimeter. Oscilloscope preferred. Possibly smoke tester for water leakage control around locks or cable penetrations. Electrical fault checking. Check ground points of BCM and siren for transition resistance. Battery voltage during rest and during alarm. Quiescent current measurement. Linked to the moment the alarm goes off. Diagnosis alarm system in steps. Step a visual check and simple checks. Mechanically, check all locks for smooth operation. Check bonnet latch and hook for looseness and contamination. Check rubber penetrations of door hinges and tailgate for cable breaks. Check siren for traces of moisture or oxidation in the plug. Step 2, live data monitoring. Go to BCM, an alarm-related data list with GDS2. Relevant parameters. Driver's door status. Passenger door status. Status back doors. Tailgate status. Status hood. Alarm system, status armed and not armed. Have the vehicle locked and observe that all entrances are closed or hood closed. Leave the car at rest for 10 to 15 minutes and see if an input momentarily flickers open. Practical approach. Car parking outside. Activate the alarm system. Leave a laptop with GDS2 within range and data logging. When the alarm goes off, you can see which input has changed at that moment. Step 3, check the bonnet switch in a targeted manner. Even if bonnet seems fine in live data. Common cause. Control. Mechanic. Move the hood slightly when closed and follow live data. Electric. Resistance measurement of switch in closed and open position under slight movement. Preferably with an oscilloscope while vibrating or knocking on the lock. Solution when in doubt. Hood lock including switch replaced preventively. Good contact surface and adjust that hood closes really tightly. Step 4, door locks and tailgate. Look at each door separately in live data. With the car closed, gently pull on the door and move slightly. Note if status briefly jumps to open or unsure. Check the wiring harness and the door lead-through for breakage. Check micro switches in the lock of every suspect door and replace the lock if in doubt. Step 5. Siren with internal battery. In many Opel models, the internal siren battery leaks or ages. Phenomena. Alarm goes off randomly, sometimes even with the vehicle open or without a visible trigger. No error codes in BCM. Control. Usually locate the siren in the screen or on the inner fender. Disconnect plug and visually inspect for corrosion. If possible, measure siren power consumption. Test. Temporarily disconnect the siren electrically and only allow the flashing light alarm to work, if permitted. If the spontaneous sounding has disappeared, the cause is probably the siren. Final solution. Siren replaced with original one. Step 6. Voltage drop and quiescent current. Low onboard voltage or voltage peaks can trigger an alarm. Check battery age and condition with conductance test. Alternator charging voltage. Quiescent current after shutdown should be around 20 to 50 milliamps after falling asleep. Large fluctuations may indicate a module that sometimes resets, causing the alarm to re-trigger. Deactivate standard alarm. SBS coding sometimes does not have an option to fully program the alarm with this model. Possibilities. With Tech 2 or GDS2, recode body control module if the variant coding allows it. Select option without alarm if driving configuration allows. If software does not allow it, only turn off siren. Siren plug loose with or without resistance if the BCM otherwise gives error codes. Inform customer that flashing light alarm may continue to work, but no audible alarm. Only do this if the customer agrees and legal requirements allow it. Repair and repair plan. Step to complete a diagnosis. Perform live data logging until the alarm goes off. Record which input or module gives the trigger. Step 2. Targeted repair. Suspicious signals in the hood lock. Replace bonnet lock including switch. Check contact point and adjustment. Micro switches unstable at door or tailgate. Replace the lock in question. Repair wiring harness if wire breaks are found. Internal fault suspected in siren. Replace siren. For tension problems, replace battery. Clean and retighten ground points. Step 3. Check and final test. Close several times and let stand for at least an hour, preferably in the same circumstances in which the complaint normally occurs. Save log files for customer and own files. Parts and labor costs. Average prices including VAT indication. Complete hood lock around 100 to 150 euros. Door lock around 150 to 200 euros each. Siren around 100 to 150 euros. Battery around 150 to 200 euros. Labor. Hourly rate independent garage, around 65 to 75 euros per hour. Dealer is often higher at around 100 to 110 euros per hour. Diagnosis time. Allow at least 1 to 2 hours of diagnosis because the problem is intermittent. Total costs depending on the cause found may be between approximately 300 and 700 euros. Maintenance and prevention. Prevent water and moisture from locks and sirens. Check rubbers of penetrations and door hinges. Regularly check whether the hood and doors close properly without any play. In an aging car, replace the siren preventively if the internal battery is clearly outdated or shows leaks. Specific advice for your car. Start with live data logging on BCM and alarm when alarm is activated. Focus on hood switch first even though you don't see an error now. Moisture and internal will often only cause problems sporadically. If nothing comes of it, perform a siren test by temporarily disconnecting it. If the alarm no longer goes off spontaneously, replace the siren. Deleting the system completely via software is usually not possible with this generation of Mokka. The practical aim is therefore to find the defective trigger and otherwise at least switch off the siren permanently in consultation with the customer. If you have a log or print screen of the BCM data when the alarm went off, I can help indicate the correct input and choose the next step light bulby. Opel Mokka, built in 2015. General information for garage mechanic and diagnosis and repair planning. Fuel. Gasoline engines. 1.6 atmospheric. 1.4 turbo. Diesel engines. 1.7 CDTI. 1.6 CDTI. Transmission. Manual gearbox. 5 or 6 gears. Automatic gearbox. 6-speed automatic. Drive. Front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive on selected versions. Year of construction and production. This generation runs approximately from 2013 to 2016, facelift. Similar technology up to and including 2025 in later Opel and Vauxhall models. Engine types up to and including 2025. 1.6 gasoline naturally aspirated. 1.4 turbo petrol. 1.6 diesel CDTI. 1.7 diesel CDTI. Later generations get 3-cylinder petrol and modern diesel, but for a Mokka from 2015, the above is relevant. Known issues. Common problems, according to mechanics and owners. 1.4 turbo. Oil consumption and leakage at valve cover and oil cap. Ignition problems due to ignition coil and spark plugs. Cold start complaints and irregular idle. Diesel engines. EGR contamination and stuck valve. Particulate filter blockage during many city trips. Inlet contamination. Turbo vacuum line leaks. Gearbox. Manual transmission. Wear of clutch disc and pressure plate during heavy city traffic. Shift mechanism loose and difficult to shift. Automatic. Shifting complaints due to outdated oil. Kicked on and skidding under load. Undercarriage. Rapid wear of stabilizer bars and wishbone bushes. Suspension makes knocking on bad roads. Electronics. Faults in parking sensors. Airbag system and seat belt tensioner notifications. Defective window switches. Central locking and remote control malfunctions. Radio and infotainment crashes. Internet malfunctions and recalls. Various engine and transmission software updates arranged at the dealer. Check on campaign for airbag and seat belts. Some updates to the emission system for diesel. Always check the license plate or chassis number in the manufacturer's system. Vulnerable parts. Front stabilizer bars. Suspension arms and ball joints. Brake discs and pads for heavy use. Clutch and pressure plate for manual gearbox. Turbo and EGR for diesel. Ignition coil and spark plugs for a 0.4 turbo petrol. Problematic engines. 1.7 diesel. More noise and often a higher chance of EGR and turbo problems. Older design. 1.6 diesel CDTI. Better choice than a 0.7, but sensitive to the particulate filter on short journeys. 1.4 turbo petrol. Performance good, but pay attention to oil consumption and ignition components. Recommended construction years and versions. Mokka after light updates around 2014 to 2016. Preferably a 0.4 turbo petrol with full maintenance history. Only recommend diesel if you have a lot of highway kilometers. Avoid neglected 1.7 diesel without demonstrable maintenance. Diagnosis general. Diagnostic steps in order. Visual inspection of engine compartment and underside. Check engine oil and coolant fluids and brake fluid and power steering oil if present. Reading fault memory for engine and ABS and airbag and transmission and bodywork. Test drive with focus on engine power and shifting behavior and steering behavior and braking and noises. View live data during test drive if possible. Afterwards, mechanical measurements are carried out, compression and leakage test and boost pressure and fuel pressure. Common malfunctions. Engine light due to EGR or lambda or ignition. ABS and ESB warnings by wheel bearing sensor or steering angle sensor. Airbag lamp through plugs under seats or belt tensioners. Faults in particulate filter regeneration in diesel. Diagnostic equipment. Reading device with Opel-specific functions. Multimeter. Oscilloscope for complex ignition and sensor signals. Intake and vacuum leak smoke machine. Compression tester, petrol and diesel. Diesel leak test set for injectors. Cooling system pressure tester. Mechanical tools, standard workshop equipment. Electrical faults step-by-step control. Measure battery voltage and charging voltage. Check fuses and relays with voltage under load. Clean ground points and check for voltage drop. Consult the diagram and measure per circuit. In case of CAN errors, check wiring and plugs for corrosion. Read and study freeze frame data. Read and interpret error codes. Read out all modules. Record codes and status permanently or sporadically. If there are multiple codes, first rule out power and ground problems. Work according to manufacturer's diagnostic flow, if available. After repair, wipe and test drive and check again. Engine diagnosis. Check mechanical wear. Listening to tapping and rattling cold and warm. Check oil consumption with dipstick and inspect the underside of the oil pan. Check for blow by at oil filler cap and crankcase ventilation. Measure compression. All cylinders check warm and with the throttle valve fully open on petrol. For diesel, possibly cylinder or compression leakage test with special adapter. Major differences indicate valves and piston rings or head gasket. Turbo and injectors. Turbo. Check for axial and radial play of the shaft. Check oil leakage in inlet and outlet path. Test hoses and intercooler for cracks and leaks with pressure or smoke. Injectors. Leak test return for diesel. Listening to injector ticking. Checking correction, values in live data. Check the injection pattern and fuel pressure for petrol. Cooling system inspection. Radiator and hoses and thermostat and water pump visually. Pressure test for leakage. Check fan switch on point. Coolant for contamination and aging. If you suspect a head gasket, test coolant for exhaust gases and oil for mayonnaise traces. Recognizing early engine damage. Bearing noise during cold starts. Metal chips in drain oil. Presence of coolant in oil. Structural oil consumption and blue-gray smoke. Pressure in cooling system and bubbling expansion vessel. Diagnosis drive and gearbox. Gearbox problems. Difficult shifting and creaking and skipping out of gear. Screeching noise in certain gears. Leaks from oil seals and oil pan. Check manual and automatic. Manual transmission. Play and switching mechanism. Test clutch slippage and engagement point. Check oil level and oil quality. Automatic. Check for shift knocks and slippage. Check oil level and color and odor according to manufacturer's procedure. Read the bucket module for slip and pressure and temperature. Gearbox maintenance. Change the manual transmission oil approximately every 60 to 80,000 kilometers. Automatic oil and filter approximately every 60,000 kilometers, if possible according to manufacturer. If the history is unknown, it is better to exchange it than leave it in place. Drive shafts and CV joints. Check for play and clacking noise when driving away and steering. Check cuffs for tears and grease leakage. Check play and wheel bearings. Chassis and brakes diagnosis. Check shock absorbers. Leaks and rust and damage. Swing test and test run on post movement and clapping. Lifespan often up to 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers, depending on use. Brake components. Disc thickness and wear ed. Block thickness and even wear. Overhaul brake calipers if pistons or guide pins are stuck. Brake hoses for drought cracks and bubbles. Brake fluid by age and moisture content. Known problems with braking. Vibration when braking due to warped discs. Rear brakes that get stuck due to handbrake mechanism. Brake wear warning and squeaking due to poor quality imitation pads. Steering system. Play on steering rack and steering ball joints and ball joints. Check the steering pump or electric power steering for noise and operation. Check alignment after replacing chassis components. Electronics diagnostics. Electronic malfunctions common. Defective window, switches and window controls. Central locking receiver and key. Faults in airbag, connectors under seats. Parking system, sensors and reversing camera. Battery and alternator control. Battery voltage rests above 12.6 volts. Starting voltage, not below approximately 10 volts. Alternator charging voltage between 14 and 14.5 volts. Battery life approximately 5 to 7 years, depending on use. Instrument panel and comfort electronics. Check for loose ground points behind the dash. Infotainment reset and software update if complaints. Check climate control actuators if there is a rattling noise. Repair and repair plan. Draw up a repair plan. Describe complaints as reported by the customer. Add your own diagnostic findings. Priorities. Safety brakes and handlebars and tires and lights. Reliability of motor and cooling and drive. Comfort and electronics last. Prioritize inspection and replacement. First, check all oil and coolant leaks. Then brakes and tires and steering parts. Then engine and transmission problems. Electronics and comfort with sufficient budget. Urgent replacements. Worn brake pads and discs. Crooked or loose control arms and steering components. Heavy oil leakage on exhaust or brake parts. Defective timing chain or belt and tensioners. Original and imitation parts. Original advantage. Better fit and reliability for electronics and sensors. Imitation advantage. Lower price for wearing parts such as brakes and shock absorbers and suspension. For critical engine and airbag components and electronics modules, preferably original or premium brand. Parts and labor costs. Average part prices, including VAT indication. Brake pads for about 60 to 100 euros. Brake discs for each axle are approximately 150 to 200 euros. Shock absorbers each approximately 80 to 150 euros, excluding installation. Battery approximately 100 to 150 euros, depending on capacity. Stabilizer bars about 30 to 60 euros each. Clutch set manual gearbox, approximately 300 to 500 euro parts. Hourly wage. Universal garage, about 50 to 65 euros, excluding VAT. Dealer often between 65 and 100 euros, excluding VAT. Maintenance costs. Small service, approximately 150 to 250 euros. Major service, approximately 300 to 500 euros depending on parts. Maintenance and intervals. Oil and filter approximately every 10,000 miles or annually. Air filter approximately every 30,000 kilometers. Spark plugs for petrol are often changed every 30,000 to 60,000 kilometers, depending on the type. Diesel fuel filter approximately every 30,000 to 40,000 kilometers. Brake fluid every 2 years. Coolant every 4 to 5 years, or according to manufacturer. Part inspection frequency. At every turn. Brakes and tires and chassis. Annually. Battery and alternator and exhaust. Every 2 years. Brake fluid and air conditioning operation. Annual maintenance costs. On average between 350 and 700 euros for normal use, excluding major repairs. Lifespan of parts. Starter motor averages 150,000 to 200,000 kilometers. Alternator comparable lifespan. Battery 5 to 7 years. Clutch in normal use 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers. Shock absorbers 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers. Recognition of replacement need. Slow start and low voltage for battery and starter mode. Shock absorbers leaking and moving. Brakes squeak and vibrate and uneven wear. Clutch slippage when accelerating in high gear. Prevention of future problems. Maintenance measures. Always use the correct oil specification and maintain intervals. Diesel particulate filters help with regular longer journeys. Rinse the cooling system preventively and fill it in time with the correct fluid. Driving style. Warm up the engine slowly. Do not exceed half throttle and low speed until oil heat. Avoid short journeys with diesel only. After heavy loads, allow the turbo to cool down slowly by driving lightly for a few minutes. Liquids and oils. Only use oil according to Opel specification. For automatic transmission, only prescribed ATF. Check coolant type via factory information and do not mix with unknown types. Purchase of used car Opel Mokka, 2015. Points of attention. Test drive cold and warm. Pay attention to engine and turbo and gearbox noises. Check for oil stains under the car. Check the underside for rust and damage. Go through electronics and all comfort functions. Questions for seller. Is there a complete maintenance history with invoices? When last distribution maintenance, if applicable? Has the particulate filter ever been cleaned or replaced on diesel? Has the car had software updates at the dealer? Have there been any known faults or warning lights? Check maintenance history. Maintenance booklet with stamps. Invoices with mileage. Check for illogical jumps in mileage. New or used parts. When new parts. Brakes and suspension and steering parts and distribution, and clutch and safety systems, always new or premium. Parts used. Body parts and interior, and sometimes gearbox or engine, with warranty from a reliable supplier. Average price difference. New parts are often 50 to 100% more expensive than used ones. For engine and gearbox overhaul or exchange part, often a better option than an unknown used unit. Engine overhaul or replacement. Benefits of overhaul. Well-known history of its own block and completely new bearings, piston rings and valves. Advantages of replacement. Faster and sometimes cheaper with an exchange engine. Average costs. Petrol engine overhaul, approximately 2,000 to 3,500 euros. Diesel overhaul often costs between 2,500 and 4,000 euros. Exchange engine comparable or slightly lower, depending on availability. Gearbox repair or replacement. When to overhaul. With internal wear but good housing. Replacement in case of heavy damage and holes in the case, or a lot of metal in oil. Costs. Manual transmission. Overhaul approximately 1,000 to 1,500 euros. Automatic overhaul approximately 2,000 to 3,500 euros. Choice of petrol or diesel for this model. Maintenance and reliability. Petrol 1.4 turbo less complex than diesel emissions system. Diesel requires more maintenance on EGR and particulate filter and turbo. Costs and risks of diesel. Higher chance of expensive repairs EGR and DPF, and injectors and turbo. Diesel is especially useful when driving more than 20,000 kilometers per year, mainly on highways. Summary advice for Opel Mokka, 2015. Recommended year of manufacture and engine. Mokka around 2014 to 2016, with 1.4 turbo petrol and manual gearbox for average driver. 1.6 diesel, especially for frequent motorway drivers with demonstrably good maintenance. Maintenance plan for problem prevention. Oil and filter annually, or every 15,000 kilometers. Regularly, check the chassis and brakes. With diesel, active attention to particulate filter and egger. Automatic transmission, oil, preventively, every 60,000 kilometers. Annual cost forecast. In normal condition and use, approximately 400 to 800 euros per year, including maintenance and a few minor repairs. For older or poorly maintained units, take into account incidental larger items, such as clutch and turbo, or chassis, up to more than 1,000 euros in a year. If you have specific complaint codes or symptoms of this Mokka 2015, I can develop a targeted diagnosis and workshop plan step by step for the mechanic briefcase wrench. Below is a practical list of common error codes for an Opel Mokka around year 2015. Handy for preliminary diagnostic preparation in the workshop. Please note, exact list depends on engine code and petrol or diesel. These are the codes that often occur in practice with Mokkas of this generation. Engine and emissions in general. Gasoline engines 1.4 turbo and 1.6. P0100. General misfire detection. P0101. Misfire cylinder 1. P0102. Misfire cylinder 2. P0103. Misfire cylinder 3. P0104. Misfire cylinder 4. Workshop preparation. Check spark plugs and coil in compression and false air. Oscilloscope for ignition coil control, if necessary. P1010. Mass airflow meter signal error or out of rain. Preparation. Cleaning agent for air mass meter. Smoke test kit for inlet leakage. Any replacement sensor in stock. P0171. Throttle valve position error. P0218. Throttle valve actuator error. Preparation. Clean the throttle body and be able to perform the learning procedure with a diagnostic device. P0300. Knock sensor error. Preparation. Access to torque values and torque wrench and oscilloscope if necessary. P0110. Fuel pressure control error. Preparation. Fuel pressure gauge and adapters for rail. Check fuel pump and filter. Diesel engines 1.6 and 1.7 CDTI. P0201 to P0204. Injector circuit, cylinders 1 to 4. Preparation. Diesel leak test set. Multimeter and wiring diagram. Spare plugs and repair kits. P0300 to P0304. Glow plug circuit cylinders 1 to 4. Preparation. Glow plug cap, correct size and torque wrench and penetrating. Voltage measurement on glow relay. P0299. Turbo pressure too low. P0235. Turbocharger control overboost. Preparation. Smoke machine for pressure test inlet. Vacuum pump and hose to measure vacuum pressure. Check actuator motor and vacuum control valve. EGR and diesel particulate filter. P0400. EGR flow error. P0401. EGR position sensor rain. Preparation. EGR cleaning or replacement. New gasket and possibly cooling water in stock if water-cooled egger. P2458 and P2459. Differential pressure sensor, particulate filter error. P2466. Particulate filter saturated. Preparation. Check or replace differential pressure sensor and hoses. Possibility of forced regeneration with diagnostic device. Inspect the particulate filter for too much pressure. P2601 and P2602. Glow relay and glow system, particulate filter regeneration. Preparation. Check power supply and relays and ground points. Lambda and catalyst. Gasoline. P0171. Lambda sensor bank. P0172. Lambda sensor 2 bank 1. P0420. Catalyst efficiency below threshold. Preparation. Lambda sensors in stock. Gas leak detector or smoke test to rule out exhaust leakage for sensor. Diesel. P0190 and P0191. Exhaust gas sensor error. Preparation. Order temperature sensors and pressure sensors for exhaust if errors occur frequently. Cooling system and temperature. P0125. Coolant temperature sensor signal error. Preparation. Coolant temperature sensor and fresh coolant. Pressure tester for cooling system. P0126. Thermostat regulation error rain. Preparation. Keep thermostat housing and gaskets. Gearbox. Automatic. P0700. Transmission control system, fault general. Preparation. Suitable ATF oil according to Opel specification. Possibility to reset adaptation modes. Read temperature during test drive. P0751 to P0754. Switch valve or pressure control valve problems. Preparation. Plan for baking specialist or overhaul company. Filter and gasket pan during oil change. Manual transmission. Often no specific P code, but there is. P0705. Clutch and pedal sensor error or range. Preparation. Check clutch switch and adjustment. ABS and ESP and brakes. C0100. ABS pump motor or power supply. C0013. Wheel speed sensor malfunction. C0035 to C0038. Specific wheel sensors left and right front and rear. Preparation. Check wheel bearings with integrated sensors. New sensors or hubs in stock if recognizable type. C0040. Steering angle sensor incorrect or not calibrated. Preparation. Ability to calibrate steering angle sensor after alignment. Airbag and safety. B0200. Driver side airbag circuit fault. B0210. Passenger airbag circuit fault. B0224. Seat belt tensioner error. Preparation. Check the plugs under the seats, and sometimes a repair kit is needed. Diagnostic device that can erase crash data and error codes in airbag module after replacement. Follow safety protocol when working on airbags. Comfort and bodywork. Body control module. B3010 and B3015. Central locking and lock error. Preparation. Diagrams and access to door wiring harnesses and lock mechanisms. Parking sensors. C0130 and C0135. Front rear parking sensor signal error. Preparation. New sensors and paint for color if necessary. Climate control. B1070. Indoor temperature sensor error. B0165. Blower motor control error. Preparation. Blower resistance module or control unit. Provide access to the stove house. General preparation for this Mokka. Diagnostic device. Reading device that can handle Opel-specific modules. Possibility 2. Service reset. Steering angle sensor calibration. DPF regeneration. Reset throttle and adaptation values. Measuring tools. Multimeter. Oscilloscope if available. Smoke machine for intake and leakage. Fuel pressure gauge, petrol and diesel. Cooling system pressure tester. Parts that are useful to have in stock often. Spark plugs and ignition coil for gasoline. Glow plugs and glow relay for diesel. Air mass meter. Lambda sensor bank. EGR valve diesel. Differential pressure sensor, particulate filter. Wheel speed sensors. Brake pads and discs front and rear. Front stabilizer bars. If you let me know which engine is petrol or diesel and manual or automatic, I can refine the list to the most likely codes and immediately write out a concrete diagnostic step-by-step plan per code for the mechanic wrench clipboard. Below information focuses on similar material and preparation. Everything applicable to Opel Mokka 2015, but also usable as a reference for other Opel models with the same technology, such as Astra and Meriva and Zafira around those years. Petrol engines similar. 1.4 turbo. Also occurs in Astra J and Meriva B. Typical points. Oil consumption higher with poor maintenance. Ignition coil and spark plugs often give misfires P0100 to P0104. Throttle body contamination P0218. Preparation. Always check oil level and leakage at valve cover. Spark plugs and ignition coil standard in warehouse. Cleaning agent inlet and throttle valve. Gas valve adaptation values can be reset with a diagnostic device. 1.6 atmospheric. Also available in older Astras. Generally reliable. Please note, Omega and Lambda sensors P0171 and P0172. Coolant sensor P0125. Engines diesel comparable. 1.6 CDTI. Can be found in Astra J and Insignia and Zafira Tourer. Typical points. EGR contamination P0400. Particulate filter saturation P2466. Particle filter pressure sensor problems P2458. Preparation. Differential pressure sensor and EGR often in stock. Possibility of forced regeneration. Change fuel filter if in doubt about injectors or pressure. 1.7 CDTI. Older technology from previous Opel models. More noise and more frequent EGR and turbo problems. Same type of error codes, but usually more frequent. Diagnosis structure, generally similar material. Step 1. Copy the complaint description exactly. When does it occur? Cold, hot, and speed and load. Step 2. Read out all modules. Engine and transmission and ABS and airbag and body control. Print or save error code list for file. Step 3. Basic checks. Battery voltage and charging voltage. Fuses and ground points. Visual inspection for leaks. Brakes and loose plugs. Step 4. Targeted diagnosis per group. Misfires gasoline. Codes P0100 to P0104. First spark plugs and coil and plugs. Then compression. Then fuel pressure and injector control. Diesel particulate filter. Codes P2458 and P2466. First check sensor and hoses. Measure against pressure in exhaust. As mechanically correct forced regeneration. If complaints recur, have the particulate filter cleaned or replaced. Egger complaints. P0400 and P0401. Control, vacuum, or electrical control depending on type. Clean mechanically if possible. Replace if there is a lot of play or binding. Compare with other Opel models. You see the same engines in practice. Opel Astra J with a 0.4 turbo. Same coil and spark plug problems. Same oil leak at valve cover. Opel Zafira Tourer 1.6 CDTI. Same particulate filter and EGR malfunctions. Same differential pressure sensor problems. General workshop preparation. Handy as basic stock and tools for this generation of Opel. Parts. A set of spark plugs and at least one ignition coil for testing. A set of glow plugs and a glow relay. Mass air meter compatible with multiple models. Lambda sensor bank 1. Egger valve 1.6 CDTI, widely used. Differential pressure sensor, particulate filter. Wheel sensors standard sizes for Astra, Mokka and Zafira. Tools. Reading device with Opel brand support. Smoke machine. Fuel pressure gauge. Cooling system tester. Multimeter and preferably oscilloscope. If you want, I can briefly list the typical codes plus test method for each component. For example, Egger and particulate filter and ignition coil and particulate filter pressure sensor, so that you can use this as a comparison list for several Opel models with the same technology wrench clipboard. Below is compact information that you can use as a general reference for Opel Mokka 2015 and comparable Opel models with the same technology. The design is aimed at garage mechanics. Engines and technology similar. Gasoline. 1.4 turbo. Used in Mokka and Astra J and Meriva B. Known points. Oil consumption at long intervals. Valve cover leakage. Ignition coil and spark plugs cause misfires. Throttle body contamination. 1.6 atmospheric. Used in various Astra and Meriva models. Usually reliable. Pay particular attention to lambda sensors and coolant temperature sensor. Diesel. 1.6 CDTI. Used in Mokka and Astra J and Insignia and Zafira Tourer. Known points. EGR contamination. Particulate filter blockage. Differential pressure sensor, particulate filter malfunctions. Inlet contamination. 1.7 CDTI. Older Opel engine. More noise and more frequent EGR and turbo problems. Typical error code groups and approach. Misfires gasoline. Codes. P0100 misfire general. P0101 to P0104 cylinder specifically. Standard approach. Check spark plugs and replace if in doubt. Test the ignition coil by changing cylinders or installing a known good ignition coil. Measure compression in case of persistent misfire. Check false air with a smoke machine. Mass air meter and inlet. Code. P1010 air mass meter signal error. Approach. Visual inspection of the inlet path and hose between the turbo and the inlet. Smoke test for leakage. Check plug and wiring. If in doubt, replace the air mass meter and check the teach-in values. Throttle valve. Codes. P0218 and similar. Approach. Dismantle and clean the throttle body. After installing the gas valve, relearn it via the diagnostic device. Egger diesel. Codes. P0400 Egger flow error. P0401 Egger position. Approach. Remove cooling water hose and EGR. Mechanical cleaning. Check wiring and plug. If the error persists, new Egger. Particulate filter. Codes. P2458 and P2459 pressure sensor. P2466 particulate filter saturated. Approach. Check hoses to pressure sensor for blockages and cracks. If in doubt, replace sensor. Measure against pressure in the exhaust. If exhaust pressure is too high, clean or replace the particulate filter. After repair, forced regeneration with diagnostic device. Diesel glow system. Codes. P0300 to P0304 glow plugs. P2601 and P2602 glow relay. Approach. Measuring voltage on glow plugs. Measure glow plug resistance. Check glow plug relay, power supply and ground. Lambda and catalyst gasoline. Codes. P0171 lambda sensor 1 bank 1. P0172 lambda sensor 2 bank 1. P0420 catalyst efficiency low. Approach. Check the exhaust for leaks before the sensor. Check fuel and air ratio. If there is a clear error, replace the sensor. At P0420 check whether misfires have occurred for a long period of time. Cooling system and temperature. Codes: P0125 coolant temperature sensor, P0126 thermostat rain. Approach: connect sensor and test wiring. Compare coolant temperature with reading value. Check thermostat housing and replace if necessary. Gearbox: automatic. Often: P0700 and specific solenoid codes. Approach: check the gearbox oil level according to factory procedure. Evaluate oil by color and odor. Replace oil and filter if dirty. In case of serious complaints, call an overhaul company. Manual transmission: usually no codes but complaints. Difficult to shift. Clutch slippage. Approach: check clutch pedal and hydraulics. Switch mechanism for play. Check cooking oil and replace if necessary. ABS and ESP. Codes: C0035 to C0038 wheel sensors. C0040 steering angle sensor. Approach: check the sensor and cable at the wheel and disconnect the plug. Check ring and wheel bearing if integrated. After alignment, calibrate the steering angle sensor with the diagnostic device. Airbag and seat belt. Codes: B0200 and B0210 airbags. B0224 seat belt pretensioner. Approach: check plugs under seats. Look for broken cables in seat guides. When replacing, always follow the procedure and disconnect the battery. Comfort and bodywork. Body control module. Lighting. Central locking. Electric windows. Approach: check fuses and grounds. Check door penetrations for broken cables. Only replace the module after measurements and exclude water or moisture damage. General diagnosis sequence. 1. Record complaint and test drive. 2. Read out all modules and write down codes. 3. Basic checks for voltage and ground and fluids and visual leakage. 4. Targeted diagnosis per error code group. 5. Clear codes after repair and controlled test, drive with live data. Useful basic stock for Opel Mokka and similar models. Spark plugs and at least one complete ignition coil. Glow plugs and glow relay. Air filter and diesel fuel filter. Air mass meter. Lambda sensor bank 1. Egger valve 1.6 CDTI. Differential pressure sensor, particulate filter. Typical wheel sensors front and rear. Brake pads and brake discs for the most common sizes. If you indicate petrol or diesel, and manual or automatic. Can I make this information even more specific for exactly that version so that you can use it one-on-one as a workshop, manual thumbs wrench? Below is an overview that you can use as a basis for all types of Opel Mokka first-generation models. So approximately from 2013 to 2016, and the direct successors with comparable technology. Information is aimed at workshop and diagnosis and repair planning. Construction. First models and engines. Then per group. Known issues. Diagnosis approach. Maintenance and costs. You can use this mirroring for comparable Opel models, such as Astra and Meriva and Zafira with the same engines. Models and engines, Opel Mokka first generation. Gasoline. 1.6 atmospheric. Simple engine. No turbo. Usually reliable. 1.4 turbo. Direct injection in later years of construction. Happens a lot. Best mix between consumption and performance. Sensitive to ignition and oil consumption. Countries differ. Some markets also have a 1.6 turbo and a 1.6 city direct injection engine, but these are less common in the Mokka. Diesel. 1.7 CDTI. Older generation. More noise and often more problems with EGR and turbo and particulate filter. 1.6 CDTI. Newer generation. Cleaner engine. Less consumption. Yet sensitive to EGR and particulate filter and pressure sensors. Transmissions. Manual transmission. 5 or 6 gears. Almost all engines available with manual gearbox. Automatic. 6-speed automatic. Especially with 1.4 turbo petrol and 1.7 and 1.6 diesel. Drive. Front-wheel drive. Standard on almost all models. 4-wheel drive. In some versions, with a 0.4 turbo and diesel. Rear axle has clutch and transfer case-like unit with separate oil. Known issues per engine and model. 1.6 gasoline. Valve cover leaking and gasket tired. Lambda sensors aging. Coolant temperature sensor malfunctions. Generally low risk of engine damage with normal maintenance. 1.4 turbo petrol. Oil consumption during long intervals and wrong oil. Valve cover and crankcase ventilation problems. Ignition coil and spark plugs misfires. Throttle body contamination and learning problems. Some cars have a slight chain or tensioner noise when cold starting. 1.7 CDTI diesel. EGR clogged and stuck. Turbo vacuum problems. Particulate filter full outside highway use. Injectors dirty with bad fuel. More chance of cooling water leaks from EGR cooler. 1.6 CDTI diesel. Better base though. Particulate filter pressure sensors often fail. EGR contamination. Particulate filter blockage during short journeys. Inlet contamination with oil and soot. Gearbox and drive. Manual transmission. Clutch wear during a lot of city driving and towing. Switch mechanism play. Sometimes leakage at seals. Automatic. Switch knocks with old. Slip under high loads. Sensor and solenoid problems internally. 4-wheel drive. Rear axle coupling wears out due to incorrect use. Oil souring if interval is never done. Chassis and brakes. Stabilizer bars and front control arms wear out often. Rear shock absorbers are more likely to knock under heavy loads. Cornering sensors and wheel bearings with integrated sensors cause ABS problems. Electronics in comfort. Front and rear parking sensors fail. Window controls and window switches. Central locking locks and cable breakage in door passage. Airbag plugs under seats. Diagnosis general for all Mokka models. Always the same structure. 1. Describe the complaint exactly. Cold or warm. Tour area. Speed. Moist or dry conditions. 2. Read out all modules. Engine. Transmission. ABS and ESP. Airbag. Body control. Instrument panel. Radio and climate. 3. Basic control. Battery voltage and charging voltage. Fuses and main relays. Mass points engine and body. Visual inspection for leaks, loose plugs and brakes. 4. Test drive. Follow live data with diagnostic tester. Gasoline fuel trims. Diesel particulate filter and EGR values. Turbocharger pressure. Coolant and inlet temperatures. 5. Targeted diagnosis per system. Diagnostic engine petrol all types. Misfires. Cylinder-specific codes. Test the ignition coil and spark plug per cylinder. With cylinder change test and known good ignition coil. Compression measurement in case of permanent error. Check inlet for false air. Mixture and air mass meter. Walking restlessly and P1010. Check air mass meter with live data. Check the hose between the air filter and the turbo for cracks. Smoke test inlet. Throttle valve. Faltering throttle response. Stationary unstable. Dismantle and clean the throttle body. After cleaning the gas valve, teach it via diagnostic tester. Cooling system. Staying too high or too cold. Check coolant temperature sensor. Test thermostat for open and closed behavior. Radiator and fan operation. Diesel engine diagnosis of all types. Egger. Rattling or jerky running. Smoky when accelerating. Read EGR position and control. Clean mechanically and test actuator motor. Continue to replace if error occurs. Particulate filter. Power loss and high consumption. Often fan and regeneration smell. Measuring DPF pressures. Check pressure sensor and hoses. Forced regeneration if basic conditions are correct. If saturation returns, clean or replace the filter. Turbo and air path. Whistling or howling sound. Smoke from exhaust. Hoses and intercooler for cracks. Check turbo clearance and oil leakage. Testing the vacuum system with a variable turbo. Diesel injection. Irregular running. Starting problems hot. Return leakage test on injectors. Check rail pressure during start and load. Diagnosis gearbox and drive. Manual transmission. Difficult to shift when the engine is cold. Check gearbox oil level and contamination. Derust and lubricate the switching mechanism and cables. Test the coupling for slip and noise. Automatic. Shock or slip. Check oil level and color according to procedure. If there is a lot of dirt and metal, consider box overhaul. Reset adaptation values after oil and filter chain. Four-wheel drive. High-pitched squeak or thump when accelerating or turning tight corners. Change oil in rear axle and clutch. If any error codes are present, read the rear axle module. Chassis and brakes diagnosis. Brakes. Vibration when braking. Check discs for thickness and curvature. Blocks for even wear. Test the rear handbrake mechanism. Shock absorbers and springs. Knocking noises. Oil leakage from dampers. Check rubbers and bump stops. Replace set per axle if mileage is high. Steering system. Play or restless steering. Check steering and ball joints and wishbone bushes. Check the power steering pump or electrical assistance for error codes and noise. Electronics diagnostics. ABS and ESP. Check wheel sensors for mechanical damage. Properly identify wheel bearing type with or without ring. Follow wiring to body via wheel arch. Airbag. Clamp or replace plugs under seats. Cable breakage during seat adjustment is common. Only replace the module if the power supply and ground are okay. Comfort and body. Central locking error. Open door penetrations and solder brakes or replace wiring harness. Lubricate locks and test for power and mass. Maintenance and intervals for all Mokka models. Oil and filter. Every 15,000 kilometers or annually. Preferably closer together for many short journeys. Air filter. About every 30,000 kilometers or 2 years. Petrol spark plugs. Long life types up to 60,000 kilometers. Change sooner if you have complaints. Diesel fuel filter. Every 30,000 to 40,000 kilometers. Brake fluid. Every 2 years. Coolant. Every 4 to 5 years. Or according to Opel regulations. Gearbox oil manual transmission. Preventive replacement between 60,000 and 80,000 kilometers is wise. Automatic oil and filter. Every 60,000 kilometers if you want to prevent breakdowns. Four-wheel drive. Rear axle and coupling around 60,000 kilometers. Average cost indication. Small turn. About 150 to 250 euros. Big turn. About 300 to 500 euros, depending on engine and extras. Complete front brakes. About 150 to 250 euros for parts plus labor. Manual gearbox clutch. About 700 to 1,000 euros, depending on the engine and attachments. Turbo diesel. Replacement quickly above €1,500, complete with labor. Particulate filter, cleaning several €100. Replacement around €1,000 to €1,500. In summary, for all Mokka models: gasoline, 1.6, quiet engine, and few major problems with proper maintenance. 1.4 turbo, strong engine but pay attention to oil and ignition and valve cover leaks. Diesel, 1.7 CDTI, most risk of EGR and turbo and particulate filter problems. 1.6 CDTI, better choice but still sensitive on DPF and sensors. If you want, I can do it per individual model. 1.6 gasoline, 1.4 turbo petrol, 1.7 CDTI, 1.6 CDTI. Develop a separate diagnosis and maintenance card that you can place in the workshop for quick reference wrench clipboard.